Hello and welcome to episode 49 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. With me as usual is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. Busy painting away there, but we'll get onto that in a minute. Before we go anywhere else, elementgames.co.uk. Go to theimperialtruth.com, click on the advert, and purchase all your toys. There's all that Death Watch goodness coming out, or just come out, which is pretty awesome, actually. It's kind of groovy. I'm kind of liking it.
Yeah, I'm quite keen on it actually myself.
Yeah, and don't forget as well, you can actually order the new Black Library, some of the new Black Library releases through there. So I think they get in the new hardbacks for the Heresy when they come out. So they don't get like when they reprint and do a hardback for the first time of an older book. So I think we're down to one. I think Deliverance Lost came out, so they won't have that, but they will have Praetorian of Dawn. So it's another place where you can go and get that. And with their quick service, if you don't live near a GW, that means, you know, most of the time you're going to get that on that Saturday of release anyway. So, and at 20% off, or 15% off, depending on how they do books. I don't know if they do them slightly differently. So that's pretty cool.
It's excellent.
Yeah, plus everything else, and their gaming venue. So Element Games for all their cool stuff.
How is that gaming venue coming on? Is that all done now? Is that ready to rock
I
and roll?
haven't spoken to anyone. I've seen some photos. I know they've had events up there. It's something I'm going to get in touch with them to kind of see exactly where they're at. I think it's pretty much there. Certainly the main section of it. As I've said before, anyone who knows the old venue knows the building needed a lot of work doing to it. Particularly for a gaming venue, the toilet facilities were lacking. So that's a big thing that needed to be done. I don't know if that's done yet, purely because I haven't spoken to anyone, haven't been up there. But if anyone is from up that way and can let us know, put it on the Facebook, because it'll be cool to know. Cool to know. And then also we have
Lil Legend Studios.
Indeed. So as we mentioned later on, Miles came to the event. He played in it, but also he set up his little hobby area the day before. And was having his little tutorial session, which looked pretty good. I was setting up all the stuff at the time. Otherwise, I would have gone over there.
Unfortunately, I missed it. But I was a bit gutted that I couldn't actually sit down and watch Miles at work.
Yeah, by the time I did go over there, he was on the weathering powders and stuff, and I quite like the clean look I've got, so I'm not worried about weathering. So I was like, okay, fair enough, cool. But I know the guys there were particularly interested in what was going on, which is really good. And did you see the Warhound he put up?
Yes, yeah, it's rather impressive.
Stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So if you haven't seen that, he put it up on the Forge World Facebook group, and he's put it all over Twitter as usual. So you can search for at Lil Legend Studios, or Lil Legend Studios. The links are in the show notes anyway. So yeah, no. Again, smashing out some awesome work. Loving what he's doing at the moment. It's really very cool. So, Neil, are you? I assume you're painting.
Yeah. I have a little bits and pieces here. I'm doing some bits and pieces to Persa Ralbo, as always. But hopefully, I'm getting near the end now, so that should be quite good. Yeah,
you've got a rough time when you hope to be done, or?
I want to have all the body and all of his bits and pieces done, apart from the base, by the end of this month.
Okay, cool.
So that gives me a good target to aim for.
Yeah, that becomes a thing. That's something that, with everything that's been going on, I haven't set any targets because I knew I was going to be very busy, but certainly now that's kind of out of the way. I'm trying to prioritise my painting, trying to work out exactly what I need to get done. And for me, first thing is my Age of Sigmar stuff, so I've got that ready to go. And then it'll probably be my Space Wolves. Or my Knights, actually. I've got a few Knights. And one of my friends might be selling a few Knights, so it might have to be the Knights.
Yeah, Knights are fun.
Yeah, and it's something with the airbrush as well.
Yeah, definitely. Probably a good thing to start with an airbrush because of the size and all those bits and pieces. Probably a good thing to get stuck into.
Yes, so I'll have to look into that. I'm still kind of in the process of sorting out all my hobby bits. I've got a big pile of stuff I need to sell, so I'm going to be hitting up eBay as well with just stuff that I haven't used, or I picked up stuff for people and they haven't wanted it in the end. So a couple of event models, things like that. So yeah, that's all part of the progress as well to help me fund, because I did book my hotel for Adepticon. So they went live in the middle of the week, and boom, 5 nights there is, however much. The beauty of Adepticon, when we went last time, I think we had 5 in a room. So they're queen-size double beds. So in England, if you go and get a double room, you've got 2 pretty slim beds, haven't you?
Yeah.
And then you go to these hotels in America, and I'm sure not all of them the same, but certainly last time it was 2 queen-size double beds. So it was like, cool, awesome. 2 blokes on one, 2 blokes on the other, and then Dave Whitek from After Eleanor slept on 2 chairs pushed against each other, which was quite cool. So, yeah, 5.
That's a lot in one room.
It is. It saves a lot of money.
I bet it does.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we were literally, it was like, wake up, go down, eat breakfast. You might pop back to your room once during the day, but that was it. It was literally roll in. Oh, there's some people asleep. Quietly get into bed, go to sleep. And that was, it was shower, toilet, and bed. That's all the rooms, and storage. That's all the rooms were. So, when it takes a room down from, if 2 people share, like, it'd be almost $400 for that period of time. When you can knock that down to under $200 or $150, makes a heck of a difference.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's booked up. So I'm the next thing is I'm looking at flights out to Chicago. Hopefully got a mate or 2 coming, maybe playing Ninth Age, I think. But either way, we can still have fun.
I love the way you put that.
That's cool. Play whatever game you want to play. But he'll still hang out with us, and we'll still hang out with a few of those kind of guys. So. And that's the beauty of it as well. When I went out to Adepticon, I was playing Warhammer. I hung out with Carl from the Independent Characters. That's where I properly got talking to him. Jason Mullins from the Overlords, and Loopy and a few of the other guys. Got chatting to those guys. And then every time I walked up to the Warhammer room, I kind of walked into the 30k room, had a little walk round, came out, went back to the Warhammer room, just to see what was going on as well. So you can mix around these kind of things. Adepticon's not too big that it becomes a pain to try and keep up with that kind of thing. Going into the 40k hall, that's a different story because it's rammed. But that's what you get when you get like 400 people in the team event or whatever it is. But you do get to see, again, their displays. When I went, we're out in the hallway, so you still get to see all the big displays and all that as well. It's just really cool.
Yeah.
So yes, fingers crossed, get all that sorted. Got to get a ticket to Adepticon. That's the next thing. When I went last time, I think I was up at 12 or something waiting for the thing to go live, and then by the time it had all calmed down enough for me to actually purchase my ticket and my event tickets, it was like 1:30 in the morning. I'm going, I need to get these before I go to sleep, But all these things they only need that kind of traffic for a couple of hours, and then it all dies down. So you understand why they don't spend huge amounts on it for that period of time. But it can be frustrating, that's all. But yeah, so I haven't really painted much. I've been focused fully on the event. And I've played a couple of games. It's always good to see kind of what people are looking at with the new armies and stuff, with the new book, because it's all still pretty new. And you're going through that red book with the changes and hearing people who play the various legions talking about how it's going to change their lists and stuff. There's always the Alpha Legion's always quite an interesting one, because they can pick and choose other legions as well. It's like every time there's a change to another legion, they're like, oh, I can take them.
Yeah, makes them a little bit more tricky, doesn't it? You're constantly reinventing the list.
Yeah, well, Luke, who came to the event at the club, he, I think his plan is to do a Raven Guard Alpha Legion list. So it's an Alpha Legion rules, but he's going to take a Raven Guard unit, and then he's going to paint them all up as Raven Guard. So, basically, maybe based on Deliverance Lost, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe just because he thinks Raven Guard are cool and he wants to paint that kind of colour scheme. I don't know. But yeah.
Sounds good. I mean, I must admit, there are certain armies like that in Shattered Legions where you just think the combinations are endless, aren't they, really?
Yeah, Shattered Legion's something I might want to look at a little bit more in depth about what they can do. The Black Shields as well. That's just even more different because you're moving away from the Legion structure. But yeah, it's widening out a lot in the Heresy, so you are starting to come up. It was always the Mechanicum that caused people questions, but I think a lot of people are getting used to them now.
Yeah, and I think they're starting to fit into their own sort of synergy, aren't they? So you're getting used to the sort of high wound, usually high toughness sort of creatures, low initiative. You sort of get into a bit of a rhythm. You know what you're going to be facing.
Yeah, you can have a little bit of a guess when all the Space Marines are coming at you armed with las guns and with different types of armour. That's a weird one. What do you mean they don't have power armour? That's going against what you've built up for years as a kind of, particularly people who've been in the game for 20 odd years, like, oh yeah, Space Marine stat line never changes really. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, they're armed with different guns, man, and they got different armour. Wow, that's mind blowing.
Completely, yeah.
In recording the kind of review, this episode, I say, probably won't be hugely long, but it's we ended up talking. I talked more about the event from my viewpoint and the organisation and various things like that. Did you want to do a couple of shouts out for your games, or?
Yeah, and unfortunately, in typical style, I've forgotten everyone's names.
Yeah, but you did that like halfway through the game.
Yeah, I did that pretty much at the start of the game.
Yeah, that's another thing I meant to do, actually. I was trying to rush round Cardiff, trying to find sticky labels, just because I thought, hold on, there's quite a few people here, and just put everyone's name on a sticky label, stick that on your chest, and at least,
I did have the one benefit of I would introduce myself at the start, I'm Neil, and then it would be, are you Neil of the podcast? Yes. So I suppose my name was probably easier to remember than most.
Yeah, again, everyone comes up to the desk to sign in, and all right, Greg, how you doing? And I'm looking at them going, I know this name, I don't know this name. As soon as he says it, I'll remember. It all click. But when you're busy, particularly, and you've got a lot of people, and some of them are new, and you're like, oh yeah, I saw you last year. You were here last year. I do know it. It will fit in there somewhere. And I'm not great with names anyway. I tend to write down when I'm playing a game. I tend to write the person's name down, just so I remember it.
Yeah, it's probably a good practice to be in, because this was technically my first. Well, I've never been to an actual gaming weekend or anything like that before. So for me, it was quite a new experience. Yeah,
when I write down my warlord trait, things like that, I tend to write down the person's name, and then I also tend to try and keep a track on what turn we're on, because some people use dice, some people just kind of work it out, which is what I tend to do. I'm like, actually, no, if I put down the initials for each of us and just tally off how many turns we've had. That's an old, as I've said before many times, is things I used to do in Warhammer quite a lot, writing down all the spells, so it's no hassle to do those little extra bits. But yeah, cool. So you were using your Iron Hands in their new modified. Did you take Pride of Legion in the end?
No, well, I couldn't. It would have been completely illegal if I did, so I reverted just to a standard army list, which meant taking some more troops.
There were a few of them.
Standard tacticals to get in there.
Yeah, there were a few non-really right to war lists.
Yeah. It was. I tell you what was interesting. I felt that actually having to rewrite my list the way I did with more the other two tactical squads actually made it more playable in the scenarios in the game setup.
Sure, yeah.
Because of all the objectives we had to capture, I actually at the end of it I thought, I'm pretty glad I did rewrite that, because with my normal list, which would have been 2 or 3 Terminator squads, I would have struggled so badly on some of those scenarios. Yeah,
there were a lot of high power, low AP weapons around as well.
Yeah. So in some ways, I think it worked out more beneficial for me. It was tricky that I only had one painted tactical squad, so I did tell everyone at the start that the tactical squad that is not in the vehicle, you need to kill them quickly.
Oh dear, Neil, I didn't know about this. Oh, you're touching on dodgy ground there.
It worked though. The amount of times I thought I need to get them out, and then literally the last man will get shot and killed. I thought, oh, that's handy.
Dear, oh dear. Yeah, it's, painting deadlines is always a thing. It's, particularly when you're working on something like you are. But maybe it's something you have to look at, expanding your iron hands.
Well, I'd like to put them to bed a bit and get my Night Lords done. So I've got probably, another year to get them done. So I might get them done.
Yeah, maybe not that long. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I've got my Mechanicum done now, so I can always use them. So I can work on my Wolves now because I can bring out 3,000 points of Mechanicum. Cool.
Yeah, it's nice when you've got that nice big round number as well, because it feels complete then, doesn't it, really?
Oh, no. Definitely not complete. Every time they release something, I'll add them to my Mechanicum. No, not the moment. Save the pennies. But yeah, and that's maybe something in itself. Maybe we can look at talking about how to plan an army out, start to finish. Yeah. It's I don't want to say too much, but I'm working on a segment with some people outside of this kind of realm, kind of outside of the heresy community at the moment, about their journey into the heresy. So hopefully that's something I'm going to have coming on the show at some point, and we'll look at various aspects of getting into the hobby and approaching heresy from a new viewpoint, because I still think there are a lot of people still on the verge or just new into the heresy, and I think we're going to get even more. So it's something that may be worthwhile. Fingers crossed. But yes, anything else before we? Do we even want to have a news section? Should we skip the news section and do it now? Because frankly,
I think it's probably advisable because there's not a lot to report really.
No, so we had the open day. We've had nothing 40k released. We've had some Tau guns, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
One thing we have, two things we've had. We've had a little update on the staff armies. So James Hewitt's Iron Warriors and Andy Hoare's White Scars, which are looking very cool, both those armies, and it's great to see them coming along. It's always good to see what the staff are up to. And then we had the picture of Russ that we've all seen, pretty much.
Yeah, but I must admit, it looked very crisp. It was quite nice to see a proper photo.
And we've had little changes on it. So he's got his, the shield's still there, I think, but it's lower down. So there's a bit of confusion over the shield. The model's looking great. The wolf heads on the backpack's quite cool in that he's got 2 at the top and then 2 halfway down as well.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. That was really nice.
Which is really kind of refreshing for all the people who are like, oh yeah, don't use any wolves in your wolves. It's like, well, at the end of the day, people call them space wolves, and they did make an effort to live up to it to a point. They embraced the image that other people had of them for a reason. So they didn't go, it didn't get silly. It wasn't over the top, but in various aspects, they allowed people to see what they wanted to see in them and went and kind of didn't discourage it. So it's good to see the wolf motif is there, even though it's not going to be overstated on the basic guys and even on the characters and stuff. It's not going to be, wolf heads everywhere and pelts and stuff. What it does do, I think, is it helps legitimize for the people who are purists. Should we say purists?
Purists.
Who are like, oh, don't put your 40k heresy in your 30k heresy. What it does do is it legitimizes taking a few of those breastplates and stuff like that from the 40k Space Wolves with maybe the wolf across the chest and using them in 30k. And it helps. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm doing my army the way I want to do it. And, tough. If you don't like it, tough. You don't have to play me. If it's that offensive to you, fine, don't play me. That's cool. I I think most people will begrudgingly play you anyway, even if they point out, oh, that torso's not supposed to be there. But it's your heresy, do what you want. There's enough scope to do that anyway. There's no reason why 100 Space Marines couldn't have fully embraced the wolf emblem, because, they came from a part of Terra which actually, worship wolves or whatever, or not worship wolves, but held wolves up in respect, or, there's all kinds of reasons you can have that. But I'm very much, I'm doing it anyway. But some people need more of a kind of, it's okay to do it.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Permission almost.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And there's different people, and some people do that because they're worried about what will be said, and some people do it because they want to feel that it's still part of their heresy that they have, and their heresy is built up off what Black Library and Forge World tell us. So, it's cool, but that element of legitimacy, for want of a better word, is really good. But yeah, he's looking fantastic.
My theory is that he's coming out at the at payday this month, and the reason they're not releasing anything is they're just going to let everyone's money build up.
So it says coming soon. Now, we know they want the book to be out before Christmas, and that is their time scale. We know again that their time scale, changes quite often. Soon's a relative amount of time. What does soon mean? At the moment, they've got the reduced shipping charge, so it's £125 to get free shipping for this month. So the cynical side, or the business side of my head, suggests that when that ends, we might see Russ.
Yeah, probably right.
Because this month it's all about getting people to order. And then when Russ comes out, people will order Russ. So why, in some way, in a kind of purely money sense, and they're a business, they've got to make money, why bring him out when you've already got a deal going on, when you know he's going to sell anyway?
Yeah, no, completely.
So there's a chance that we could be looking there, and there's a chance it could be 3 months down the line. At the end of the day, if not 100%.
We've tried to guess Forge World before, haven't we? And we got it completely wrong.
And this is the thing. It's like there used to be, for GW and Forge World, there used to be kind of, although people said that they just made it up as they went along, you could actually read the patterns and stuff. And that, with the changes that are going on, as you say, I've tried to predict Forge World, I've tried to, and GW recently, and got it horribly wrong, publicly, because they are doing things differently to the way they were. So they could release Russ without the book, which is not an issue. A PDF, I'd be quite happy with a PDF of Russ's rules, and you don't even have to explain the Legion rules to me, because, I'm still just going to use Russ anyway. Because he's Russ.
No, I'd be I know I haven't got a space for me, but I'd even be happy if the model came without rules to start with.
Yeah, I don't think they would, though.
The opportunity to get him, wash him, build him, paint him, I think a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd release him without rules, because you just know that all they'd get on their Facebook, their Twitter, their emails is, well, we got the model, where are the rules?
Yeah, they would get absolutely but think how nice it would be to say, well, I don't have to worry about playing with him tomorrow. I'll get him painted, and I'll do a really good job on him, and all this, that, and the other. And then you could say in a month or two's time, oh, I've now got the rules. I'll play with him now.
Yeah, and again, would it bother me either way? Not really. So if the model comes out, I'm still buying him because it's my Legion, and it's he's my dude, and he looks freaking awesome. So I'm buying him anyway. So kind of irrelevant to me. The word we had at the open day was the wolves weren't ready yet, so Ferry, Frecky and Gary, I'm trying to remember now, my mind's gone blank. So they're not
Ginger
quite ready
Spice
yet.
And Sporty Spice.
Indeed, and we'll be looking probably later at them, but again, I'm going to buy them anyway, because they go with Russ.
I might just buy the wolves only, just to throw the cat amongst the pigeons on their ordering system.
I think some people will. I think particularly because there'll be character piece quality, you might get 40k players looking at them for their Thunderwolf cav for a character.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, how big are the wolves meant to be in the
Pretty big. You can see them on the cover of Prospero Burns.
Yes, and they're sort of like just behind.
Yeah,
aren't
they are pretty big. Let me just image search that on Google while man looks up things on the radio, which is
great radio.
It's always a good subject. So we have right at the front Lehman Russ. Lehman of the Russ. I saw some interesting talk about that recently, actually asking what a Lehman is. Lehman's his name, and he's of the Russ. So beyond that, I don't know. But they come up to his waist at their shoulders, so they are pretty big.
Yeah, because the Primarchs are quite
so their heads are like as big or bigger than his chest, according to that image. Now, obviously, that image doesn't have to be exactly how it's done, as we've spoken about beforehand. Some interesting comments as well. What I love is how different people have their own ideas of this fluff, and we all get it from reading books. There's no doubt about it. We all see when they make a book into a film, like 100 people can have 100 different ideas on the bloke playing the main bloke from the book. Oh, he looks exactly how he should do. Oh, he doesn't look right. Oh, yeah, and they're all completely different. The beard question's been coming up again, which is brilliant because
beard just won't go away, will it?
Because he's never had a beard. The sword is brilliant because people were moaning about the sword, but he's had that sword for ever since John Blanche did his first mad scribblings. And the fact he's got a sword, and it's not but it's it's not. And this is the thing we get. I think, humans look for things that are familiar. So we think of Lehman Russ, the Vikings in space, awesome. He has axes and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, he doesn't. He has a sword. He's got other weapons as well, but there's no reason why he can't have a sword. And in fact, quite a few of them do. So, yeah, those kind of things. The braids was quite good because he's got the braids just above his ear in the picture. And the flowing locks as well. And I saw someone commenting about that, and then they just put a load of images up from the Vikings TV series with people with braids and flowing long hair. It's like, actually, that looks really cool. It's like, I can't do it in my hairstyle, but yeah.
Me might both struggle with that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just quite interesting to see how people have created these images of their characters. And sometimes they're born off of a misunderstanding or a preconception. And actually, every time they've read the description of that character, they've forgotten the fact he's got blonde hair or what have you, But yeah, I think the model's looking amazing. And I've got absolute faith in Sam, in what he does. So as I said, I don't think they've really.
I think they'll sell a few.
Oh, this release is going to be mental. I mean, Space Wolf fans, there was a discussion on 30k forums about how many people are really Space Wolf fans. Well, you'll find out. They are hugely popular as a legion. Thousand Sons are also hugely popular as a concept. And I don't think they've ever, the 40k Thousand Sons were cool, but I don't think necessarily people bought into that aspect of them. They wanted the psychers, they wanted all that, and the automatons that they become is cool, but it's not 30k Thousand Sons, because they're the most overpowered single dudes, aren't they, as well? So there's that aspect to it. It's like, yeah, these guys sing one-on-one of the nuts. Then the Custodes, then the flipping Sisters of Silence. And one of the major iconic fights. I know that Kauth is iconic, but Kauth was always like, the World Bearers attack and destroy the Ultramarines. It was never like, until we got the books from Dan and the comic and everything else, it wasn't like the Cool War. It was just like, oh yeah, didn't the Word Bearers do over the Ultramarines? Sanguinius was always a cool fight against the Bloodthirsters. Bloodthirster and all that. That was always cool. And Prospero was cool. So this is that's my opinion on it anyway. And I think from where I've talked to people and everything else, I think Prospero's always held something because of the nature of what it was as well. Because the wolves were manipulated by Horus, because it was the first time that a legion went out to really hurt another legion to bring them into heel. You know, we found out since that the World Eaters were taught a lesson and stuff like that, but this is proper aggressive, you know, even further than that. The fact that Custodes march with them, the Sisters of Silence march with them, and cause what some people consider to be one of the most loyal legions to eventually turn against the Emperor. Even though they sold their souls hundreds of years before, but there we go.
By the by.
It's pretty undisputable in the books. But yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's gonna fly. GW are gonna make Forge are gonna make money hand over fist on this. We really are.
I think we could be looking at a relatively long coming soon period just for stock levels.
Yeah, there could be that as well. You know, they have to make sure that the stock levels are right. We could see this could be again. You know, I almost waited until Space Wolves were done before I bought anything Heresy related. And I think other people have done the same. So we could see a huge influx just because of that. Because, you know, Space Wolf fanboys or Thousand Suns fanboys are just like, right, finally, my Legion's here. Now I can spend all that money I've been saving.
Yeah, and I think you will. I think with the major legions, when they come in, they probably do drag more people into the heresy.
Yeah, because I mean it's only
the same when Blood Angels come in. I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say Blood Angels and Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Space Wolves have always had extremely strong fan bases. The Imperial Fists less so. You know, Iron Warriors. I always felt that a lot of that was due to their rules being very good, and that when their rules changed, a load of them disappeared. Yeah, Iron Hands, a small contingent. Salamanders, a small contingent. Ultramarines always had that issue of being GW's poster boys, so actually everyone kind of railed against them because of that. It was always like, why would I want to collect Ultramarines? They're everywhere. When they actually weren't everywhere, you just saw their pictures. All the pictures were blue. So
yeah, it was the generic picture, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's. I think it's always been Dark Angels, Space Wolves, and Blood Angels as the big bad boys. We haven't really got any Dark Angel stuff yet either. So
you got Dark Angel shoulder pads.
Yeah, that's all they need, isn't it?
Indeed.
And a fence. They need their own fence to sit on, and then they'll be fine. But yeah, so yeah, when it's going to be big. It's going to be huge. And beyond that as well, as you say, when Blood Angels come out. Although the Blood Angels, it all depends what they put in that book. Because, the rumours of it being the old Angels of Death Codex, so Blood Angels and Dark Angels covering Thramas and Cygnus Prime might not be as true as the rumours are meant to believe. I've no idea personally what they're doing. If they did that release together, that would be pretty big. Demons, Blood Angels and Dark Angels coming out at the same time.
It'd be massive, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be another big one. But that's even if they're doing it that way, which they might not be. So, yeah, who knows? Not me. That is for sure. We did have an announcement. I think that's all the models, isn't it?
Yeah,
it
models
feels really weird.
Very light.
Feels really weird. Obviously, the Stormbird, the Mastodon, they're still building up stock because the mould issues and everything else. So I don't expect that one to be up. It might be up soon, but
Is it possible that the reason we haven't had much in the way of releases over the last few weeks is because those slots were almost designated to Mastodon, Stormbird, things like that, and because they've been maybe had mould issues and they haven't been able to put anything in those release dates?
Quite likely. So I heard, I don't know how true this is, I heard that the release after the open day was supposed to be for the dice that failed to make it to the open day. So that explains 1 week, maybe. Second week, I don't know. But yes, you could be right. We've seen and we've heard that Forge World are getting more organised in their structure of how they do things. So it's less of, oh, we've got this, we'll release this. Or we'll show this off at an open day. No, you can't show that off yet, blah, blah, blah. If that's followed through to a logical conclusion, that would suggest that, as you say, the releases are also getting more structured. So no, the Mastodon was due to be released this day. Should we just move them forwards? No, because they're released that week and we're going to do it with this and this and this. But I mean, I'm not on the inside on that. I don't know why, but it'll all come out in the end. Just have to be patient, that's all.
Yes, indeed, be patient.
You can't really get too angry when your toy soldiers don't turn up the week you want them to turn up.
Nerd rage.
It's a powerful force. But yeah, that was it for Forge World. On Black Library front, we do have the Praetorian of Dawn signings. So, if you are at Forge World on the 19th, I think it is. Sorry, at Forge World, at Warhammer World on the 19th of August, John French is there doing signings of Praetorian of Dawn, and it's also ahead of its release slot. So you can pick it up early if you can get to Warhammer World, which I can't. So I've had first discussions with a fellow to pick me up a copy and mail it to me immediately.
Excellent.
Because, if you don't ask, you don't get at the end of the day.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm not actually worried about having copies signed. I've moved past them, Some people do. Cool. For me, they sign so many of them, it doesn't really mean anything. It's nice to have, but I do understand why. But I think Marcus, who's been on the show before, has got the first editions of Horus Rising in the two different. So they did a limited format and then another format, and he's got both of them signed. And one of them, Dan's written for the Emperor. One's like Death to the False Emperor, which is quite cool. But
cool,
I'm never going to look at the signings and think, oh wow, that was that time that bloke signed something for a random dude. and it's not like they're worth anything extra if you sell them on, really. So, yeah. But each their own. But definitely being able to get that book early, that's pretty cool. So if I can get that done, sorted. But that's about it.
I think it is, yeah.
Very quiet. I suppose we should probably just move on to the main topic then. It feels weird not having a huge amount of news, even though we talked about it for a while.
Hopefully, like in the next couple of weeks, we'll see some more stuff.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. What did we have at the open day that they could kind of push out? We got the Nightheads.
I've been waiting for the scythes and the
one day it'll be all the weapon upgrade packs.
Yeah, those I've been waiting for.
Yeah, which is a cool release, but it's always a bit kind of like, oh, it's no new models. The Porphyrian Knight I don't think we'll see for a little while, but then again I could be completely wrong on that.
Moritats?
The Moritats, yeah. Well, I don't know, it'll be interesting. The thing with Forge World as well is, I know people kind of moan about their release schedule a little bit, but they only make so much in a year. So if you had it all now, you'd be waiting months for like anything. Yeah, so I do think it is better to have this almost weekly release schedule, with maybe the odd month has something a little bit lighter and then another month has a few extra bits. I think it's a better way to do it. They've only got so many people. But yeah. Oh, I did see Black Library did put up a thing today looking for graphic designers and that as well. So if you are in England, because most of these jobs are in England, or prepared to move to England, then do keep an eye on their Facebook pages, their Twitter, because they do post them up there a lot as well. It was always kind of cool to see what they're doing. I know Forge World have put up for the new painting now because Dimmy's left, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, Dimmy's gone.
Yeah, so it was really cool. Dimmy did some absolutely brilliant stuff. Some of his Ultramarines, his own Ultramarines, are phenomenal. Really good. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So many changes. It's all still changing. It's all like in upheaval still from when they rearranged everything.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because, we were looking at the... Yeah, I don't know. It's weird as well because we've got specialist games as well, which this year isn't going to be a major thing. But, I mean, Blood Bowl's going to be out probably that last weekend of November-ish time, which is their traditional Christmas release time. They do it well before Christmas. But, we'll be looking at next year as well of, the Adeptus Titanicus fitting into all that as well. And it'll be interesting to see as they get bigger and then start supporting those games.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, because it's this whole support element, isn't it, really?
Yeah, because, they're probably going to be, the box set will probably be plastic and then supported with a lot of resin. So, this kind of period of time we're in, it's going to last a while in terms of having new methods put out, which is really cool. But also as well, I noticed a couple of 40k podcasts had book writers, game designers on their podcast, which is something that hasn't really happened before. So Jervis went on to one, and then Robin Cruddas and Phil Kelly were on talking about the Death Watch release that's just come out. So it's like, well, that's a bit different.
Yeah, it's very unusual, isn't it, really?
Yeah, that takes a lot of getting used to from a pretty closed house. Warhammer TV's moving to Facebook as well now, and it looks like that they could be doing a lot more videos about a variety of things. Rob Symes and mates met up at Open Day, taking the video footage up there. Has been involved with it. So I don't know exactly what they've got planned, but I'm sure they're open to sensible suggestions for things. But it would be great to see more videos coming out of Games Workshop and Forge World as well. Not just the painting ones, which are cool, don't get me wrong, but yeah, who knows? It's all crazy. We just have to keep an eye out and figure out what's going on as it happens.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and it's our mind dump of the weekend. So it's a little bit all over the place, like some of our episodes tend to be, but hopefully there's some good information in there for you. Okay, well, we've had quite a busy couple of weeks. Well, I certainly have. I don't know about Neil. But this kind of section is going to be a bit freeform. Don't really know how long it's going to go on for. It's the event took up much of the time. And recovering from the event took a few days as well. So it will be us looking over it. From my part as an organiser, what went wrong, what went right, what I'd improve, what I'd keep the same, all that jazz. And Neil will have probably quite a different viewpoint from being a player. So,
indeed.
Yeah. So we got, first off, we should mention that we've got 190 odd photos, I think, on Facebook from the event. So thanks for Pete for doing that. Some of them are mine, so they're not as good probably. We've got all the single miniature that were put in. I think we've got almost every army as an army shot. Maybe not as many pictures as I would want in there, but there we go. We did make a single video on the Friday. We didn't get another video done for various reasons. And that's something that maybe I'll bring up a little bit later on. And you can go to Facebook and check all them out. Some of them are looking quite cool, I must admit. But as I say, it's a shame we didn't get a bit more organised on that front. The plan was to and then things got in the way. So you can go there and check that out. Friday, we turned up, and Firestorm Games. Have you been there before, Neil?
No, I've never been to Firestorm Games before, so
Okay,
it was my first outing.
So what was your view on the venue?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I didn't quite know what to expect, because I've only ever been to hobby stores that are just mainly stores with maybe a few gaming tables at the side, or, somewhere dotted around. So, obviously, the first thing I noticed is, I found it on SatNav. So, obviously, I'm driving down this sort of industrial road and thinking, where's the venue? Like, sort of like feeling a bit lost. And then I bump into Firestorm Games, and I thought, glad I found it. And I didn't go back there till the next day, but when I walked in the venue, I was quite impressed at the size of it, because obviously, just being used to hobby stores and things, you sort of walk in and immediately you're in a shop, but you walk in and it felt like you're walking into a bar, almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where you walk in, you've got the bar area, and then off to the left is all the gaming tables. So it did feel very different to what I thought it was going to feel like.
Yeah, so Firestorm is situated in an old carpet warehouse. So it is just an old industrial unit at the end of a road, opposite the Brains factory in the centre of Cardiff. So essentially it is a warehouse. It does have lovely plastered all right on the front. It has their logo, Firestorm Games, and that, it looks good. But, as you say, as you walk in, you've got a bar immediately on your right. In front of you, you've got some tables that's mainly used for card gaming, board gaming. To the left, you've then got the 70, 80 tables. I can't remember exactly how many they've got. Kind of with a nice wide walk space down between them. And then if you kind of go round the bar to the right, they've got their shop area and the kitchen where they serve food and everything else. Yeah, and as you say, I mean, mere fact you've got 70 odd tables in there. That's a lot of space in itself. Plus then keeping the cards, that seating area separate, because they also have like a couple of couches as well. There is a lot of space in there. You never really feel crammed.
Yeah.
So
I was quite surprised that the shop wasn't more at the front, actually. I thought you'd be walking into a shop and then out the back would be the table sort of scenario.
Yeah, it kind of fits, I suppose. The other thing they do have is some nice like display tables and demo tables as well at the front, right as you walk in. So they, obviously pushing Games Workshop and Privateer Press and the other bits and pieces, as you'd expect from something like this. But yeah, the venue's good. It's 5 minutes walk from the train station. As you say, there's plenty of parking during the weekend as well. There's even more parking down the street and in some side places as well. I mean, we've done it before where we've parked at our hotel and we've walked in every day because it is 5 minutes from town centre. That's
exactly what I did as well. I left the car at Firestorm and just walked backwards and forwards to the hotel each day.
Yeah, same here. So I turned up Friday afternoon and the car stayed there till Sunday afternoon when we went home, which is really useful because the hotel we were at wanted to charge £8 a night for parking and things like that as well. So, but there's also a lot of hotels, as you say. We stayed in a hotel just a couple of minutes walk the other side of the town centre. There's a lot of hotels in the city centre. There's a whole street, Cathedral Street, which is another like 10 minutes. £5 in a taxi after midnight to get from the city centre down the end of Cathedral Street, where they've got just rows of B&Bs basically. So there's loads of places to stay as well, and that's what makes it quite an attractive venue for holding an event. All of that together, plus Cardiff itself, where you've got quite a compressed city. So again, it's one major pedestrian area with loads of bars down there. So whatever kind of night you want, you can go and find it as well, which is really cool. We set up. We had all the fat mats out. The video shows us putting all the fat mats out and putting the terrain on them. All the terrain supplied by Firestorm themselves, which is really cool. What I wanted to do was bring some of our clubs down, but never got round to it. And again, I'll probably go into a little bit of that later. But what do you think of the terrain The mats, how did that look?
Well, I must admit the mats I thought were excellent. And I've never really played on mats before, but I can see the appeal now. I was very much in the camp of liking the sort of GW tile sort of scenario and the Forge World tile scenario in the past, but playing on mats just makes life so much easier. It's nice to have a nice soft surface that the dice lay flat on, that you don't get flock and grit on your hands, and you can put things down without a fear of them getting damaged. It is just a much better experience, I think, gaming on mats.
Yeah, so these are fat mats. So again, Table War helped sponsor the event, and they provided some fat mats, which are then sold off, most of them, and most of them have gone now. And most of them have gone because they were seen at that event and people were like, oh, actually, yes, I'll take some of these home, which is really cool. It shows you kind of, because again, I think a lot of people were like, oh, they're cool. Do I want one? You know, blah, blah. What the mats give you is they roll up into a nylon bag. They store fairly easily, so you can have 2 or 3. You can bring them out. And for that kind of price they are, for buying a Realm of Battle board, you're probably getting 2 or 3 mats, plus you're not having to paint them.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, easier to store, not going to damage them as easily.
And some of the effects are really cool on them as well, isn't there? There's like the lava one I was particularly impressed with.
Yeah, that looks really good. And that's the thing, you can have 3 then, so you can swap them out, so you've got more opportunity in that. One thing I do notice, I don't think you really feel it until maybe you then go to a hall and play without them, is the quietness of not having dice rolling across the table.
Yes, yeah.
So maybe some people don't like it, but like, so say you've got just a table with you and your mate, some dice rolling across the table is not a major issue. When you start to have, we had 27 tables going, you know, and when you go higher than that and you have 100, 200 people in a room, that starts to add to the background noise, which means people then have to talk louder, which means the whole noise of the whole venue goes up, and people start getting headaches and sore throats and everything else as well. So I must admit, it does help with that as well. So yeah, that was all done. The terrain.
I thought the terrain was very good, very varied. It was nice to play on a lot of boards that didn't have the generic GW ruined cities on.
Yeah,
which you feel you play like your life with.
Sure. As an organiser, it was John, one of the guys who works at Firestorm, was helping out. He was absolutely brilliant. He was like, right, what do you want? There's all this here, and we just kind of cracked on, grabbed whatever terrain we could find and just started throwing it down on tables. There's a lot of line of sight blocking. Yeah, they do games, they do all systems, so there's a huge amount of variety of styles and things like that. Some of them not so useful for 40k or 30k, should I say? But we grabbed a load of that, and then he turned around and said, "We've got a volcano. If you want to put that on one of the lava." Yep, we'll have half a volcano. And there was, we got this, so I went and grabbed some more. One thing I felt, and indeed was pointed out to me by one of the attendees, is there wasn't a huge amount of terrain that you could sit in. So you say, you know, the ruins, the GW ruins, and you see that a lot, but they are useful for moving troops through. I think maybe in general there was a little bit lacking in 10 men being able to sit in a piece of terrain.
In fact, I did have a couple of games where there was discussion of this piece of terrain we'll call impassable, because it was so big that if you did put someone on top of it, you had no chance of getting them down. Yeah, and that's not a problem in and of itself, just as long as there's a bit of a variety. And it's indeed, yeah.
At Firestorm, you know, they're going to keep up that terrain thing, and maybe we could have been a bit more clever with what we did, but.
And I did have, what was nice as well is all the players I played with, there was always a terrain discussion beforehand. It was always, okay, what we're calling cover for this, you know, are we saying we can go on there? You know, we had all those discussions beforehand, so it was always fair and open.
Yeah, I didn't even think about kind of telling people to do that. That was, you know, that's something that I think is part of the game. Where 30k has a lot of variety available to it, that's a real strength. just as long as it's worked through in the right way. So having that discussion and going through the terrain quickly, that's obviously impassable. That's a forest, cool, whatever. Even if it's just that, just to make sure both players are on the same wavelength with what they're doing.
Yeah, because I think with GW terrain, you can argue, well, it's in the rule book, this is what it does, or this is what the cover save is. Whereas with third-party terrain or other bits, you may need to say, well, are you treating that as woods? Are you treating that as a ruin? You have to have those discussions.
Yeah, I definitely think, next time there'd be certainly potential to get maybe one of the clubs to help out with 2 or 3 tables, which means we can then spread the remaining terrain around less tables to create more interesting boards to play on. I don't necessarily think they were bad. I think there were a few that could have been better. There were a few that were very good, a few that could have been better. So that's something as an organizer I looked at, and I was aware of it when I wasn't playing on the boards. But, that's nature of the beast.
Indeed.
In certain ways. But yeah, that was cool. Amazingly, no one, I did say there was some more scatter terrain. No one came and asked me for more scatter terrain. So I think everyone just kind of got on with it. And no one really said to me, oh, this terrain's, out of play. They can't play on this or whatever. To be honest, my answer would have been rearrange it anyway, because, it's not a competitive event. It's all about people having fun, fun time together. So it doesn't bother me if it's different from one game to the next. If both players feel that it's not, it's gonna be a detriment to their game, then change it. So that's cool. For those who haven't read the pack, we split the.
That'll be everyone at the event then.
Yeah, that'll be most people at the event. In fact, I'll go on to the pack now. So you've got an event like this, you have to put out something. Not just what time people have to be there, what they have to bring, kind of how the games are going to work, all that. For this one, we had a scenario pack as well, because we're using non-standard scenarios. Now, I wrote the first part of the pack very quickly. The idea was to let everyone know that this event was going to take place in Cardiff as early as possible, because Mark and Pete, who came with us, they booked their room a fair way after I booked my room, and it was £40-60 more expensive, and they didn't get breakfast. So, and that was, that's a fair difference. What you can also get is those hotels book up if suddenly an event comes on in Cardiff, and then the prices go astronomical. So the idea was get that out straight away. People can make their mind up and hopefully save themselves some money, and also book the time off work if they're coming up on the Friday, making sure other halves are okay with it and all that jazz, which is, you're never going to be able to please everyone, but do it early enough, you've got more of a chance. The second part of the pack for me was the scenarios and the special rules and everything like that. And that came out, unfortunately, within the week of the event. And that's, say, I've got a new job, things happen, life, blah, 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 blah. Bit disorganised, it got delayed. It's not necessarily a major issue, I don't think. But it did mean that people were a little bit more unsure when it came to playing the games exactly what they should be doing. So, did you have any issues in terms of that?
Yeah, and the fact I hadn't read the scenarios or printed out the pack was a bit of a problem.
Yes. So, again, no matter what you do, as an event organiser, some people won't read the pack anyway.
Yeah, I think what's your catchphrase the whole way through the weekend? Have you read the pack?
Yeah. And half the time the answer was no. Or they say they have and they haven't really. And that's always going to be, you're always going to have an element of that, whatever. The longer you've got it out there, the bit more time people have got, because they might even play practice games, things like that. So you do help mitigate it. As I say, you won't ever mitigate it completely. It's just the way it is. Players are players. So,
to be honest, it wasn't that bad, because it was a case of first game, what mission are we playing? That one. Okay. Do you have a copy of the pack? And luckily my opponent did. And he said, right. I said, right, read it out. And we just read the whole thing, the whole scenario, start to finish, discuss the points. Oh, okay. So we do this then. And that's how that works. Okay. Right. Let's go. And it was just roll off and away we went.
Yeah. The one thing you can get with that is it's easy to make a mistake when you just read it through that one time, or to miss something that's changed slightly. So, in this instance, we had 5 zones, as it were, fighting for kind of control of those zones. And then also there were relic objectives on each table as well, and the idea was that each side would collect these relic points, which would allow them to find relics to use and distribute amongst their side. Became very aware very quickly that most people didn't realise what the relic objectives were or that they were there at all. So, made an announcement. Now this is where I really got the answers. It's not in the pack. Yes, it is. No, it's not. And it was in the pack. But it's something that, again, had that been out a little bit earlier, that might have been picked up a little bit better. But, that happens. That by the by, really. But even, to be fair, even by game 5, people were a bit confused about them. But again, I think that's because they relied on what I was telling them rather than reading it.
Yeah, I think there's a big element of that.
But I'm going to take some of the blame for all that because of, particularly once the pack's out late as well, it can't get, I gave it to a mate quickly and said, check this, and he brushed over it very quickly. You're always going to miss stuff with that as well, because also because he's a mate, he might know what I was trying to do, so he might be reading that scenario with that on his head. Again, the last scenario, the 5th one, that came into show where I'd worded something slightly differently, and 3/4 of the people had done it the way I intended, and the other quarter had done it the way it was written. So it was just a very simple thing, and I kind of make an announcement, fixes it. Not a problem, but could have been prevented. So, yeah, that was the PAX kind of issues with that, but minor, and I don't think it really affected anyone's enjoyment.
There was enough people on hand to ask the question, and I think I was even in one game and someone said, let's just ask a human, and we just bumped into the people next to us and said, how are you doing this? And then it was resolved. And again, because it's not a tournament, it doesn't matter if the people next to you are playing it differently. Exactly.
Just long as you and your opponent are both happy with that rule. So you could actually, and it did happen that people were playing the wrong scenarios on the wrong tables. And I was like, okay, right. Well, it doesn't really matter because they're both playing a scenario that's in the pack anyway. And they're both having fun. And it doesn't, no one's gaining a massive advantage from playing that scenario more times than they should be. So, yeah, there is an element of that as well. The other thing we had these two teams. We had loyalists and traitors, and the idea is you're fighting for control of the planet. And I'll leave the pack up on the website for a little while if anyone's interested to have a look or to read the fluff, which I'm sure that most people didn't bother reading. We had these loyalists and traitors, and the idea was the captains of each team would then place cards out on tables to randomly assign players to tables. So it mixed it up a bit, with the exception of a handful of armies that were particularly strong or particularly kind of rock, paper, scissors. So what did we have? Andy bought his Warhound.
Yep.
We had David bought, there was only a single knight army, which I was quite surprised with. We had a 10 flare shield mechanicum list, which included the Ordinators, which everyone was really scared to play. And there was also a Thunderhawk carrying Rogel Dawn. So they were the 4 major, I think, really kind of potentially issue-causing.
Iron Warriors as well, wasn't there? Vortex missile list.
The Iron Warriors with the Vortex missile list, yeah, but that was Lucas playing that, so I knew that although that yes, he's got a Vortex missile battery, and it was 1,100 points of fortifications, that actually it's not as bad as it looks. Because I know Lucas will play it to the theme that he plays and everything else. So he's not the kind of guy who's taken that because it's the most filth thing. It's because he's got an idea for an army.
Yeah. So that's the best type.
Yeah, and that's fine. And actually, the ability of having Lucas come to the last event where we saw his Iron Warriors list and thought, oh, that could be nasty. Within the first game, it was like, oh, no, it's fine. That's cool. You know, it kind of fits. I think he may have lost all his games first year, may have won one. So that's very much a case of the army plus the player. You know, it doesn't matter what army you have if the player's playing it in the right way. You know, you can still have a fun game.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But, yeah, so the idea was those 4 armies at various points would all be like accessible for people to be able to volunteer to take on. So the bloke who bought, 80 Space Marines and no real heavy weapons doesn't get lumbered up against the Knights. Should you have to do that? Is the bloke who bring in the 80 Space Marines, that's a different question, and people have their own ideas on that. If you bring an army that is really deficient in one aspect of the game, then tough cookie if you get shoved up against something. But, again, from my point of view, I've got 54 people there playing games. I just want them all to have fun.
And to be honest, in one of the scenarios, he probably would have won it hands down every time. Yeah,
probably. I tried to design scenarios that had a little bit of everything. Trying to kind of look at particularly super heavies, I think. I've expressed before, super heavies have a certain advantage in the rule set as it stands. So things that maybe don't help them so much, that hinder them a little bit. And I certainly didn't get the scenarios 100% correct how I wanted them, but they were roughly there, I think. No one moaned at me for them, which is always a good thing.
That helps.
It certainly does help, yeah. So the idea of these 3 captains, and I managed to pick on the day people I knew that I could trust to stand up in front of people, because you need different things.
Why did you pick me?
Because people know who you are, for starters. It'll become quite obvious that Neil Paints will do that. So people can, also because you're on the show, they can approach you. So there's like approachability, the fact that I knew that I could shout and you would come over and we could sort that out. And then the other ones around you as well that were happy to shout across the room at people to help organise as well. This was probably the biggest thing that I envisaged working one way, and it didn't work. And what we ended up with actually was a lot of kind of quickly me going down tables going, this person needs a player. And I'm still not sure how to fix it, kind of thing. It's a bit strange in that you hear, what it's come from is you hear like the Aussies talk about that kind of system. And then you hear other people doing different things and you're like, well, I don't want to just randomly draw it. I would like some control for people over what's going on. But there were kind of, it's not until you get into that situation which you really see what the issues are. So we had playing cards with names written on them. The names weren't that clear on the playing cards. And people didn't remember which card they had. So, some did, some didn't. It's not an issue. I'm not blaming them. But
I thought the playing card idea was a really good idea, that you had the red deck and the blue deck, so you could write names on. I think the only place it became difficult is when you were walking around, like say, dishing out cards on tables, and they were face down. People, it was then trying to find out where you were placed, and you were walking around the tables trying to go, well, where am I? Where am I?
Yeah, and that's something that next time, if we do, I think the system in itself could work if it's implemented better. So first thing is there needs to be 5 more minutes where the captains have some time to organise that, because you guys were rushing around. And I should say thanks to Pete, Jason, Johnny, you, I'm trying to remember who the others were now, for the life of me. Miles, again, choosing someone that people can approach. There was one more, and I cannot remember. Mine's gone blank. So, yeah, they needed a bit more time to get organised, because the problem is, as soon as cards were going down, people were going, oh, that's my card, and walking over to it. And I'm like, well, the point is that it's supposed to be anonymous, so you don't necessarily know who you're playing. You know, again, I don't think it made a major issue. I think most people just turned up anyway and just were like, yep, cool. But I don't know how I'm going to do that next time. It might be a case of just having people kind of set to areas and then getting on with it. So you five are playing in this zone, go. And then you five are playing in this zone, go. Find an opponent. Because the other thing you've got as well with random is you might end up having someone you played against already. And actually what I was really happy with was, you know, someone came up to me and said, oh yeah, no, well, I was just been drawn against that guy, I've just swapped table. It's like, yeah, that's fine. That's cool. Again, you're not a tournament, you don't have to come and ask me in a weird way. You know, I'm just a facilitator here. If you're sensible enough to say, I've played him already, I don't want to play him anymore. Who wants to swap? Cool. Yeah, jump across.
Yeah, it was very friendly like that. There wasn't any real sort of argy-bargy getting on with, I've been picked against so-and-so and all this, that and the other. It was very much sort of people were swapping where they felt they needed to. And
yeah, there were a couple of moments where, so sometimes you did get we got the Alpha Legion player, I can't remember his name, too many names, apologies guys, wanted to play Andy's Warhound, turn 2. So that was it. Put his hand up, I want to play that. The Knight Army and the Mechanicum Flare Shield Army played each other the first game. And then towards the end, at various points, we had other people saying, I really want to play you. I was like, cool, do it. Go and have a word with your captains, make sure you both got a card, go and pick a table. Sorted, you know, it's very simple in that respect. To be able to do that kind of thing, and there's much more freedom to do that kind of thing as well. So it's definitely something. And in fact, in the fifth scenario where there was no zones, everyone was playing in the same zone, I was very keen to say to people, look, go and find, if you want to play someone, go and find them. Because
yeah, I remember that because everyone was running around and going, I want to play you. No, I want to play so-and-so. And I think it was Dino, me and a couple of the loyalists were saying how we wanted to beat Dino's army, so we're all fighting over playing Dino.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. Because, you know, sometimes you only meet people once or twice a year for this kind of thing. And I wouldn't be surprised, actually, with the Heresy, with how few events there are, you know, relatively, that this is the only time that a lot of those people are in the same room. So there might be people from last year who didn't get to play who are like, no, we really want to play each other. We had a great Saturday night out, and we haven't got it on the table yet, so let's get our armies down. And because, again, as I say, because of the nature of the event, that's very easy to do. And in fact, had we had more time, had I had the Legions book been out earlier, I would have had lists in earlier. I was going to allow things like grudges. I was going to set up games like that as well. There was a lot that I'd wanted to do. Potentially looking on it, it's quite a good job it didn't come out earlier, because I just would have given myself even more work. But that's what it is. How many of the scenarios did you play?
I think I played 4 of the scenarios. I don't think I played the same one twice. Yes, I played all 5.
Okay, well there were 6.
Yes, I played 5.
So, how do you feel that they went in terms of fun?
Yeah, I must admit they all had their own flavour, which was really good. I found that they all had their own, some of them definitely suited certain types of armies, which you're going to get. And I remember that my first game was on the one with the geezers that were exploding everywhere. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, this is going to be quite painful for my vehicles, because it could immobilise your vehicle if you rolled a 6. But then I realised that actually that's not that likely to happen, and if you aren't immobilised, you just move away from that geezer in the next turn. So you just have to play, and because they were always scattering as well, half the time I was thinking, right, I'll put one there, that's absolutely going to knacker him, and then suddenly, oh no, it's scattered wildly off the table.
Yeah, so that was a variation on the lava rule from the Isfan special rules, and last year I pretty much did that exact scenario with the lava, and this year I wanted to change it up a bit because vehicles get away with the lava one. It really hurts troops, but I knew there was potential for a lot of vehicles, so as I say, we made it on a 6. Vehicles don't take a strength hit, but on a 6 they're immobilised, or super heavies take a whole point. A lot of people, it's fine. Poor Salamanders player, I think it was Dave Betts, had 4 dreadnoughts all stood in a little semicircle, and I can't remember who they were playing, but they proceeded to roll 3 out of 4 6s. Immobilise them all. But that's, you are playing a dice game at the end of the day, and weird things like that will happen over the course of, 100 and whatever games that were played over the weekend. So that was, almost all the rules I took were from Forge World books. So these scenarios were based on scenarios that were already in the packs. All the special rules, all the the winds. There was one with wind blowing across the table. There was the geysers. There was something else. Can't even remember the other ones now, but they're all basically taken from separate parts of the Forge World books and just thrown together to make some new scenarios, which, I don't think as many people play those weirder scenarios anyway from the books.
Yeah, you're probably right, actually.
I think people still kind of hover back to the basic kind of 6 scenarios, as they always tend to do. But there are loads of cool, I've got to say, I've got all the books. I sat there, I took photos of them all, took them to work. I was going through them all. There's so many rules that the Forge World give you. And there's loads I didn't do because some of them are very terrain dependent, and I couldn't be 100% sure what kind of terrain we'd have, enough quantities for the different tables, things like that. So you can do so many different things, and I encourage people to do it because it does make for some really fun games. And like that geezers one, once you played it more than once, you can start trying to block off areas by just layering geezers next to each other, things like that. So you can actually use it as part of your army.
Yeah, I must admit, it felt near the end because obviously they remain in play. And when there was 4 or 5 of them in one area and you had some units there, it was just like, oh God, here we go, right. D6, and you're rolling, and you realise that certain parts of the board were just impassable.
Yeah.
Where you'd laid so many down, you're like, yeah, just steer clear. Don't go anywhere near it.
Yeah, and the lava one, particularly for that one, the lava one can actually set fire to terrain and block line of sight, and that's something that I thought actually, I've done it before, but do I really want to be blocking line of sight all across the board as well? No. We'll take that back a touch on this one. We'll do it slightly differently. So that's something I thought went particularly well. The time scales to play them in, did you have enough time for your games?
Well, I suppose it did depend on the army, to be honest. The first game I played, as we got, I think, the 10-minute warning, we just went into super speed mode, where we were just rolling at speed. All right, do that, now do that. Yeah, okay, next go. So we got our game finished right on the deadline. However, I played a couple where I'd finished early and it was all done and dusted and it was like, yeah, great, fantastic. But then I played one against a warp cult list and just so many troops and the combats were so complicated that I think we got to turn 3 and then it was time to dice down and move on. So in some ways I'd say possibly not, but then again it does depend on the armies that you're playing.
Yeah, and not just armies. It also depends on the player. There was one person there who failed to finish a few of their games, and I'm not going to name any names because it's just the way they play the game. But it was one of my club mates played him and said that he was saying that he's not normally a slow player and why is he struggling to finish. And Joe was certainly, I think it was Joe, was certainly looking at him going, well, you are moving quite slowly. So, there is a perception there that maybe they don't have. But certainly if you've got warp cults, it's going to be more difficult than, a drop pod list full of dreadnoughts.
Exactly
And a
that,
few
yeah.
troops. There is going to be a difference in that, and people have to be understandable of that. In general, I don't think there were many games for the ones, like the first two games on Saturday and the first game on Sunday. I don't think there was a major issue for a lot of the times. Bearing in mind as well that I've already said I got the matchups wrong. That process, that went on longer than I would have wanted it to, so people weren't getting to the table as early. They weren't 100% sure on the scenarios, so you had to go through that a little bit longer than maybe again that I'd be happy with. We did have 3,000 points down.
Yeah, it's a lot of points.
Which is a lot of points. But, and then key thing was last game on Saturday, there was an issue with when Firestorm closed and a bit of communication error on my part. I didn't check. And Sunday trying to get sorted and out as well, which Saturday night was the real one for me. I was really disappointed that we ended up having to cut that round short as well, which felt a bit, I really hated to do it because I feel like I'm cheating people out of a full game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's difficult, but it closes when it closes, I suppose. So.
Yeah, moving forwards though, there's potential for me for the event to pay for the, staff member to stay at the store without, don't necessarily need the till open, just to have the store open the extra hour or so required to finish that game and move on. At the very least you can ask. They can just say no, but you can ask. Maybe going down to 4 games.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I think that's a huge kind of drop, though. I don't know. There's something in my psyche that just says 5 to 4 is a massive drop in terms of how much heresy you're getting in. And also, that's going to leave a lot of time Saturday to play your games. You're going to lose 3 and a bit hours, which you then, how much time do you add on? Because frankly, if I was playing, I wouldn't want a 4-hour round. When I went to Adepticon and played Warhammer, they had 3.5 hour rounds for games that were smaller than I was used to playing in 2.5 hours and finishing early. So I was having an hour and a bit, hour and a half sometimes, of just dead time, waiting for people to finish. And I'm like, yeah, I know you want to have fun and everything else, but sometimes there is also that kind of requirement to just get on with the game.
Yeah, so you tell they've got to speed up. I mean, It's difficult though when you're playing an opponent that maybe does play slow. Yeah, I felt on a couple of games, if it had gone to turn, that the outcome would have been very different. Sure.
Yeah, there's little you can do against the slower player. Particularly in a friendly thing. In a more organised tournament event, you can penalise them by having, if someone repeatedly doesn't finish their games, you will soon find out who is the slow player. But when it's kind of like, I'll take Rudgy from last year just because I know he won't mind. Rudgy's a great opponent. He always has a laugh and a giggle. And when he gets with someone like Johnny Cuddles, they will just laugh and giggle and forget they're playing a game for 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But if you do that during lunchtime, you can also get 6 turns in. So you can have a laugh and a giggle for a couple of minutes and then back to the game and then carry on. And then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
because otherwise, as an event organizer, I'm thinking I'm extending my game time for people to have fun conversations. So there's a bit of a balance in act there to get right, I think. But I don't know. I don't think there's necessarily a correct answer on it. Every person you ask will have a slightly different opinion.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I personally would have liked a little bit more time just to get those games to turn 5, turn 6. But then again, you're right. I think you could give 4 hours, and if you've got a slow player, they still wouldn't get the game finished.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. Certain people will use all their time, no matter what. It is just the way they play the game. And yeah, you could have all day and they still wouldn't do it because they think they've got all day. What makes me laugh is the people who think they're quick and they're not. They're quite humorous at times because they sit there and go, I can't understand what happened. And you're sitting there going, well, you didn't start setting up till half hour in.
Yeah, and then you got and every time I killed a model, you had to sit it on your tray and line it up with all the other ones.
Yeah, those are extreme examples, but I've seen them happen. I've seen people who have spent 3/4 of an hour deploying their force. And you're like, well, no offence, but you've moved it from one place to one place for like 5 minutes and it's only an inch difference. And it's not like in 40k that you can't just move the other direction, But hey ho. Yeah, it's definitely something we would have to look at moving forwards. When if you're in a venue, say, where it stays open later, there's no reason why you can't extend the day. Just as long as you've got decent breaks in there.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's fine. But, hey ho. And I mean, I think I kind of don't want to go on. I know this is a bit kind of weird the way we're going through it. It's almost a bit of a mind dump for me as well. But I think maybe it gives a bit of a clue as to, as an event organiser, what I was thinking, what was going on. The other thing that may have slowed some games down, we had 2 special characters made by Miles from Lil Legend Studios. Took loads of photos of them. So we had the Crow and Ghost, who worked the same as Knight Errant, but then had their own equipment, special rules and things like that. It was a bit awkward handing them out, as I suddenly realised how many people didn't know the Knight Errant rules.
Yeah, I had a couple of people come up to me and said, "Oh, have you got the books with the Knight Errant in?"
Yeah, and I was like, and some people were like, I kind of know it, but I just don't know exactly what the oaths are. I'm like, that's fine. People were like, no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, oh, okay, right. I just didn't even consider that, Yeah, maybe I should have done, but that was cool to get them out and see them on the tables. The people who did play with them didn't seem to enjoy them.
Yeah, well, didn't one of them win a game?
Well, yeah, they, I think Joe won the game with Ghost by managing to hide him for most of the game. Very heroic from Joe, only to be expected. But yeah, they faced each other on a couple of games. The last game, in fact, the 2 people asked for them to be on the same table. But there was another game midway through where they happened to be on the same table as well, which was quite cool. And, in the true spirit of the narrative, the traitor player was desperate to kill Ghost with the Crow, but didn't quite manage it. But yeah, that was cool to see. And we also, I attempted to give them away as prizes, but actually the people who won them, weren't too bothered. That's fair enough. Didn't have a use for them, should I say. So they will be going up as competition prizes on the show. So thank you to those guys. And thank you to Miles. He made, if you want to go on Facebook and check the pictures out, 2 awesome models.
They're really nice.
Yeah, they're completely plastic. Mainly plastic. No, they're not. They're not at all. There are plastic elements to them. I'm thinking of something else. I do apologise. But painted up, made to look absolutely sweet. Just with various bits and pieces. I was just like, he was kind of like, what do you want me to do? I said, just make 2 cool looking models and then show them to me and I'll write some background and some rules up for them. So, yeah, you will be able to win a couple of those as painted by Miles himself. Compared to last year, we removed all the competitive awards. But we had the painting awards as usual. So single miniature went to Dean Walton for his Dreadnought. You're claiming fix.
Yeah, of course.
Well, there was some dodgy Ferris on a plinth that kept taking up all the room.
With a golden demon behind him, and no one paid him the slightest bit of attention.
He was dwarfed by the golden demon. Yeah, Neil couldn't win best painted. So yeah, Dean won that, and there were a couple of close models on that one as well. I was really quite impressed actually.
the quality of the models was fantastic. Actually, just going around the tables having a look.
Yeah.
I was so impressed.
Yeah, so you kind of expect it when people are putting up their individual models. So we had Dan Quirk put up his Thunderhawk, which was lovely, actually. Really loved it. There was the Knight as well, which was fantastic. And then Dean's models won. And then we had the best armies as voted for by player and judge. And Sam Perkins won the judges one, which was a lovely kind of Sons of Horus that you almost looked past because it was, oh cool, that's a really cool Sons of Horus. And as you looked at it,
yeah, the quality of the painting was absolutely fantastic.
It really was, yeah. And it was one of those ones where I'd never really noticed it until I slowed right down when I walked past it.
Yeah, you had to actually really stare at the models and see the quality of the skin tones and the accuracy of the freehand, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and Matt Woodsmith's Word Bearers one as well, which are very. You can really see why people are drawn to that army. It just looks right on the board. It's
got a lot about it going on, hasn't it? It's got a lot of style. It looks great.
Yeah, and but as you said, there were a couple of armies. I must admit there was a couple of armies there where you thought, okay, yeah, that's fine. Don't get me wrong, but next time if you were to bring that, I would want it to be a bit better. And that's people, I think, kind of working through their army, getting it ready, maybe ran out of time, that kind of thing. But there was literally 2 of them, I think, out of 54 players. And then you jumped immediately to the good. And then it was kind of almost a curving up towards the very good. For 53 players plus a spare player, there were quite a number of high quality entries.
Yeah, actually, when I did my walk around for looking at the armies, I was actually surprised. The first couple you look at it, think, well, that's really good. But then it was amazing. I think about halfway and thought, wow, I've got a couple here that I really think are contenders. But even by halfway, you thought, blimey, what else is out there? And there was so many great armies.
There really were. The 2 Salamanders armies were really good. I love Aaron's army anyway. The 2 regular, not the just because of the different ways of talking about the armies because they're all the same kind of thing. The 2, the one with Vulcan and Aaron's were fantastic. And Dave's was cool with the dreadnoughts. There's something really awesome about seeing loads of dreadnoughts in an army. It's kind of like,
oh yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, you're allowed all those dreadnoughts, aren't you? They're really cool. So that was really cool. The Iron Hands all tank army.
Did he have Ferris in that army?
I cannot remember.
Because how did Ferris die?
It must have been him. Were there 2 Ferris players? I can't remember for the life of me now. It's pretty much a week ago. And I was doing about 100 million things that weekend. So yeah, there was another Iron Hands player. Because Ferris was it your Ferris that faced off with Fulgrim?
That was mine.
Oh, that was yours. Yeah, we were going to have the epic recreation of Isfan 3 until they both just slapped each other a bit and didn't die. Yeah, most disappointing.
That is the problem with Primarchs. They generally do that when you get them in combat.
Yeah. So yeah, we had, a whole tank army. We had that Mechanicum army with the Ordinatus and all the flare shields. I really loved that army. I thought that looked really cool. And we had every single faction except for White Scars represented. I did allow demons. There were no demons, but, we'll ignore them because no one bought them. So, yeah, all those factions without White Scars. I didn't allow Shattered Legions or the Army of Dark Compliance. But I think that was cool in itself. The really shiny red of the Thousand Suns always looks good. The Ultramarines, Ben made I put my favourite photo up of his guy, Guilliman and Rubio, make Ultramar great again, little banner that he put on the tallest building of whatever table he was on, or on the side of the road, or whatever. Added a real nice touch to what he was doing. Willard bought his pretty near 100 Black Shield infantry force, which was ace. He kind of correctly guessed that because it was 3,000 points, everyone was going to bring their big toy. So we had the Glaives, the Falchions, as you say, the Thunderhawks, you name it, pretty much. It was all there. And he took the gamble that people will be taking big guns to deal with them. So, a las cannon works almost as well as a bolter, really, when it's taking down normal Space Marines. So, yeah, he played well on that one. But there was a huge variety in styles of army, in kind of the makeup of the individuals. Yeah, the people who bought the same force, the Sons of Horus, were all slightly different. We had one with Horus, kind of flying forwards in a tank, one where he was dropped in every time, one where he was in a Storm Eagle. It was brilliant to see that as they were coming in, I was like, yeah, this is really cool. Some of the lists were particularly tough.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, which I kind of wasn't that bothered with. In reality, again, it's hard for me. I always want to I don't want to not allow people to bring the toys they bought. So, some places, some people aren't so keen on seeing Primarchs on the table, but for me, it's the Horus Heresy. You bring your Primarch. Some people only play a Legion because of that Primarch. So I don't really want to tell people they can't bring a Primarch. And so once you do that, do you tell them they can't bring a Glaive, they can't bring a Knight, bloke loves quad mortars, he wants to bring 6. Is that a major issue? Maybe.
Yes, it's the answer to that question.
Maybe. Is that worse than 4 Whirlwind Scorpius? Who knows?
I think what I found quite interesting about some of the armies that I thought, wow, that looks really hard, is often they were the most ill-performing armies. Because I think a lot of these scenarios relied on you needed troops to capture objectives, and there was a lot of victory points for capturing those objectives. And the armies that had gone for the big guns and spent a lot of points on them, they possibly didn't do very well in capturing objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Mechanicum list, which I think a lot of people looked at, so it had the Ordinatus in it. It had 2 units of 2 Krios Venators and 2 units of 2 Krioses, and a Knight Atropos, and a Mechanicum dude as an Ordo Reductor list. He only had 2 units of Tech Thralls, I think, and maybe some Thalax. There wasn't a huge amount. If you wanted to concentrate on the troops and kill them all, you could concentrate on the troops and kill them all. It wasn't particularly hard. You were going to take a pounding if you did it, but you could do that. So yeah, you're right. It's the having only troops scoring is a huge balancing act in playing that. Now, when you've got the ability through a character to make other troops scoring, that becomes quite strong. But it's negatives and minus and positives for all those different kind of aspects. Again, I thought every scenario I have will be slightly different. So there will be a kill point scenario. There will be go and capture one single objective to have a big ruck in the middle, and there will be the one where you've got to spread out. So yeah, you're going to have to be a little bit versatile to be good at everything, or do you just hope you smash enough in the few games that you power through?
Yes, I think I played a couple of games where I just went for the right, I'm going to just try and smash them off the table, and it didn't work. Because you thought, okay, yeah, I looked at around the end of the game and thought, well, yeah, I'm dominating this, I've destroyed this, I've destroyed this, I've destroyed this. But where there were just a few troops left, and they were sitting on that objective, and you hadn't quite killed that last rhino, and it was sitting, you went, oh, yeah, and then you lost it on points. And I think that is a big balancing act. If you want to go for that, I'm just going to smash off the table, it's very hard to get that to work every time. Yeah,
and that's why scenarios are become an important aspect of the game. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. The other thing I did do was we had the character deaths and the relics. Did you get to use a relic?
No, I didn't get a relic. I captured a few relic objectives occasionally.
Right, so this was literally once certain thresholds had been reached. And I was very fluid with them because of the nature of people forgetting about them, so I kind of adapted it as we went on. I gave out relics, and they were literally, because I wanted to write my own relics because I didn't have time. I took them from the book and I changed them a little bit. So yeah, the Void Shield harness, one person would be able to use that in the team, and they kept it. Not on special characters and all that jazz, try and keep it sensible. One would get, a really cool Blood Angel sword or whatever, and that seemed to go down well for the people who remembered to use them. But then that's the same with any piece of war gear. I've seen plenty of people forget to use, special rules or pieces of war gear. So that's something that I think can be used again.
Yeah, I like that element of it, actually. It added a bit of flavour.
But it also gave, half the idea was if you've got these 2 relic objectives on the table and you're not doing very well in the mission, then maybe you can go and try and grab a relic. And I found it really hard to try and balance how to do that and stop just the bloke who wins the game picking up the relics as well. And I don't think that happened as many times as I was worried it would. It did happen, and it's always going to happen to a certain extent. But there were enough games where someone was like, yeah, I won. Oh, I didn't get any relics. Because they were trying hard to get the objectives to actually win the game. So there's a bit of a play with that, and that's something that maybe I can use up the club and try and work out over a few practice games in case we want to do it for another event. And the other thing was was character deaths. So every named character, when he died, I took note of it. And when they reached 2 deaths, this is across the whole board. So there were 4 Horaces. So if any 2 of the Horaces died in the first game, they would be at a detriment from there on out through the rest of the weekend. And the first detriment was -2 weapon skill and ballistic skill. And then it was reroll all successful attacks in hand-to-hand combat. And I'm trying to think what the third was. There was only Kurz, I think. There was Kurz and someone else who got the third one. It was -2 to charge, I think.
Yeah, was it reroll charge distances or something?
Yeah, I think it was -2 to charge. So there was only 2 people to get onto that final one. But, yeah, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, well, I find it quite frustrating when you haven't let your character die and someone else did. You had the minus negatives, because that really wound me up with Ferris.
Good.
My Ferris was tanking across most of his games, and then suddenly he was on -2 ballistic skill and weapon skill.
Yeah. So, in theory, in the fluff, this was because each of those games, each of the rounds took place over a certain amount of days, like a couple of days. So yes, he could be fighting in 2 different places. The idea was partly to make people think about whether they do want to bring a named character, and secondly, that maybe you found your other character. So kind of the hope, I didn't kind of put it out there, I wanted to see if people would do it, was if you'd hunt down the other Ferris player and say, look, dude, we can't afford him to die again. So maybe try and use him differently, maybe do this. And there's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, I never found the other Ferris player.
That's just because you're selfish. But yeah, we had like 4 Horaces. So yeah, that's kind of a big effect on that table. But I think it's something I'll play with again. It was certainly funny to hear like people waiting to find out whether their characters had been knocked down to the next level. And big cheers when certain characters were, which was quite cool. But I don't think it really hugely affected. There were a couple of instances where it did change a couple of fights. I know Horace went up against a knight, and he was cursing me because he couldn't hit him very well. But who cares? Oh no, I think it was Andy's warlord actually, and then it just stepped back and just strength D'd everyone off. A warlord, I say warlord, warhound. Apologies. But then, hey, Andy actually got to use it in that game, so that's...
Yeah, because he didn't have much luck with it, did he?
No, bless him. So yeah, that's something I'll look at again, I think. But
yeah, I think it's a good thing to balance out possibly the Primarchs that you might see a lot of. because if you are a lot of Horus's, say, because he's a really powerful Primarch, there's a good chance he's going to become very weak very quickly.
Yeah, it wasn't even a balance thing. It was, for me, it was a story thing. It was like, these guys are trying to fight everywhere across this table. That let's pick them out and give them a negative rule if they are going to do that. But I haven't heard any real negatives about that over the weekend. No one came up to me and was like, "Oh my word, what are you doing? This is rubbish." So I take that as a good thing. So yeah, all the only feedback I really got from it was when I was listing down this names of people who'd been hurt, was the oohs and ahs and the jeers when it was going on. So it seemed to be taken in the right manner.
Yeah, there were lots of jeers.
Yeah, there were. But that's really kind of the weekend, I think. Miles turned up on the Friday, did his little painting class. There were a good 5, 6, 7 people. A couple of guys particularly were really getting involved in that. That seemed to go down really well. And that's something that, if he's offering that again, I'd advise people to take that up on, take him up on that. So the guys were riveted. It was a shame I couldn't get over there really and have a look. He had all his weathering powders out and was giving out sage advice. And that's something that normally people pay for, so.
Yeah, definitely. I remember I was having a discussion with him and it was interesting because we've got a very different view on painting.
Yeah, and that's, something we'll maybe look at down the line as a podcast and whatever, getting involved with all that. And yeah, as I say, I think the major things for me from this event was, if you're running an event, if you're thinking about running an event, first thing is just do it. Book it, do it, and commit yourself to it. And properly, so once, all the time you're like, oh yeah, I might run an event in, like, say, March. I might run an event in March. You won't do anything for the whole of August, because you're like, oh, March is miles away. Oh, September, oh yeah, no, I might do that event in March. If you go, right, I'm doing an event in March, contact a venue, say, can I book that out? Okay, cool, I'll let you know by this time whether I definitely want it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've got an event in March. Right. I need to get a pack out. I need to decide on scenarios. I need to decide on whether I'm going to have any comp. I'm going to need to decide how many people we have. I'm going to need, there's a lot to be done, which isn't necessarily hard work, but it still needs to be done. And my issue was I left a lot of it too late. I was doing a lot. There were 50, started off as about 57 players. It went down to about 53. And I was doing it myself because, so Neil, has got a couple of young kids and, family and work and not much time. I think that's fair to say.
Very fair. Yeah.
The people kind of around me, I could ask them to do certain things, but again, with, commitments they've got, actually, it's probably quicker for me to do most of that myself. So I'm just like, yeah, I'll do that myself. Problem is, once you do that so many times, it isn't quicker to do it yourself anymore. So that meant that every aspect of this got a bit delayed. And then once it gets delayed a bit, it gets pushed on more and more and more. When I ran the first event, that pack was done months before the event was ready. Sent it off, got my mates to make it look pretty, blah, 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 blah. Boom, it's out. Awesome. It's most of the work done. You're just rolling then. Sitting waiting for it to come in. Once you leave it late, it becomes an issue. And then it becomes a stress issue as well. And then that's got its other thing. And then you're like, all you can think about is I've got to do this. And then you're like, oh no, I need to make sure it's right. And then it just gets worse and worse. So certainly for next year, there's a lot of talk. There's some interesting talk about maybe an event inside the M25 area. Who knows? I need to decide, what events we're going to run. The hope is to run 2. I know I meant to run 2 this year. The hope is to run 2. Where are we going to run them? What kind of events are they going to be? Are they going to be narrative? 99% sure they'll be narrative. Okay, if they're narrative, we need background. Even if it's a very simple background, we need a background. We need a play system, whether that's very similar to the one we use, whether it's just playing normal games, linking them together. A decision's got to be made, because if they aren't normal, then you need to write your scenarios. Any extra rules? Now, I can't see myself running a narrative event without some fun, interesting stuff like the character deaths. I think I'll bring that back. That needs to be reviewed, as all these things do. The how to pick your opponents and the tables, that needs to be reviewed. So that's something that needs to be kind of figured out. And some of that might have to go in the pack so people know what they're purchasing. Because there was one comment, I don't know who, and they said kind of they would prefer that psychers weren't allowed. I don't know if that was a reaction to a particular psyker or whether they just don't like psychers in their heresy game. That's fair enough. You know, everyone's got their own ways they want to play the game. At the end of the day, when you go to an event, you buy a ticket, you should have enough information. I gave enough information to know what kind of, you know, basically, I'm allowing you to bring whatever heresy army you want, that you know that psychers are going to be allowed. So, you know, you're agreeing to play under the rule set. So you should kind of, you know, you can kind of suggest maybe next time leave them out, but you've got to get on with it. And if you face one, you face one. So that kind of information needs to be out there nice and early. Because if someone says, actually, Greg, you're allowing knight armies, I don't want to come. Fair enough. Don't come. You know, if you don't want to play a knight army and you're worried that there might be 10 of them, that's fine. You know, as, it's the best way to do these things is to kind of speak with your wallet, as it were. But if you come, then you're invested in what's going on. So there is stuff to do. And then once you've got it done, you also want to advertise it because, you know, if you're putting on an event, it's going to cost you some money. So you want to be able to make all that money back. So you want to be making sure that you cover your costs. I'm not saying that you should be making money. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be making money, but you don't want to be running it at a loss because that way leads, unless you've got loads of cash, in which case contact Greg at theimperialtruth.com. But, you know, most of us can't afford to be spending £300, £400 to put on an event and losing that money. You know, I wouldn't do it. Certainly wouldn't do it. So my events have to cover their costs. Big one for me this time was the fat mats. And I was worried for a bit. It was like, how long is it going to take me to shift these fat mats? I know they're quality products. Are there other people going to buy into it? Thankfully, they sold quite well at the event. So brilliant. Made my money back on the fat mats. They've almost all gone. Do I want to do that again? Well, that's something I'll have to look into. I would want to, whether I can afford to, whether I think I'm going to make it work. That's something that I need to contact them about. They need the time to get it to me. It needs to again be put out there. Because had I had more time, I could maybe have got more pre-orders for those fat mats in. So that would have taken a little bit of that worry off about, oh no, I've got X amount of money tied up in these fat mats sitting in my front room. But, you know, I was fairly confident that they would sell anyway. So it's not a huge issue on that front. But that could be anything. That could be whatever. The quicker you get your money in, the more you know how much you've got for trophies. So as soon as we pass like 50 players, I'm like, okay, that gives me X amount for the venue, X amount for food at the venue. It's another thing you have to think about. Are you providing food or not? Or how are you allowing people to go out? That gives me X amount spending money. Okay, so for the event, I need to buy paper. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to go and buy packs of cards. You know, it soon adds up. All these little bits and pieces. Not huge amounts, but they're adding up. Awesome. All right, that means I've got this amount. I did glass tankards, which I think look cool. I think they look better than last year.
I thought they looked very cool, actually. I was quite impressed with those.
Yeah, for me it was like Warhammer. I've got a few trophies. Trophies just sit on a shelf, whereas that glass tankard could sit on the shelf, or you can use it and drink out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I quite like having something that's usable. much more likely to keep it and things like that. And the photos from last year, Willard sent me a photo that evening of him drinking a pint from his. So that's cool. But, so you need to, that was those glass tankards. They add up when you've got 9 of them, and they're decent quality. So you just need to be thinking about all those things. And the earlier you can get that done, the easier it is for you as an event organizer. The more people you can have, let me get this right. If you can get the right people helping you and the right amount of people, because you don't want too many, then that will make things easier for you. I struggled at the event because I was the person who had to answer all the questions. I was the person who did this. Everything had to come through me. And because of the issues I had with the pack, it drained me. It did really drain me. And the second day, big thanks to all the players. On the second day, I'd also not eaten particularly well with a few of my medical issues that had kicked up as well. So on the second day, I was kind of in a bad way in terms of my mood. I wasn't eating very much, and I was struggling. And that's when the team captains helped out huge amounts as well. But it became a lot harder than it needed to be because I hadn't set all those things up right, and I didn't have someone else there that I could say, Fred can answer that for you. Or just, I'm going outside for 10 minutes. Handle it. But that's partly my issue as well, because I'm one of those people who's like, I want to have control of everything, even when I know I shouldn't.
Control freak.
Yeah, but it's a bit weird. I want to be aware of everything. It's not necessarily complete control, but it's knowing that the person... It's also having the people you can trust to do those jobs as well. Because I could have handed some of those jobs on to people, but I don't think it would have been much better. So, it's a little mix of everything. I'm very disorganised, but I do like to know what I'm doing. I'm a bit of a weirdo in that respect. And I paid the price at the end of the day. It was a long Sunday. I had fun. Thankfully, everyone else had fun. And no one moaned at me too much. They only giggled at me from around the corner. So, yeah, can't grumble.
No, it was very good. And I'd also like to say I thought the food was really good as well.
Yeah, I must admit I've heard slightly mixed responses, to be fair, to be honest. Particularly the first day, when I handed food around the second day, some people said, I'm not having that. It wasn't great. And I'm like, I had that and mine was fine. So I don't know whether that's just certain people's attitude towards it, or whether it was like that. I can't answer for them. It was a very brief conversation. But
I think for me, the fact that it all seemed very homemade as well, I thought I was quite impressed with.
Yeah, last year we had no problem with the food. This year, in general, it looked absolutely fine to me. You're never going to, again, with food, you're never going to please everyone anyway. Not to say that these people didn't necessarily have issues, but I can't vouch for them. It seemed fine for me. I was happy. No one actually complained about the food, which tells me that it was at least edible.
Yeah, definitely.
No one actually came up and complained. So yeah, and the fact that it's there on site as well means everyone can literally grab food, go and sit down, which is good. Yeah, and Firestorm's great for that. It's self-contained. And then in the evening, we walked back to the hotel. We were out in Cardiff having a meal, straight onto the pubs. And as I say, you can stay out till 5, 6 in the morning quite happily at a variety of, rock, dance, pop, whatever you want really. Or you can go to bed early and try and get to sleep before the snorers coming to your room, can't you?
Yeah, exactly that, yeah.
Be careful who you room with. So Cardiff offers that. Now for me it's 3.5 hour drive with no traffic. So it does have an issue in that. A couple of the guys left early because they live right in the northeast. Completely understand that. They left as soon as their game was over. So it's not, location wise, it's not the easiest for everyone to get to, but, it's not necessarily majorly out of the way either. It's not like having to get around the M25 to go somewhere, so it has its positives and negatives. There are other venues around the country that potentially I'm looking at, and they'd have to provide similar kind of quality. They don't necessarily have to be as big. They don't necessarily have to be in a city centre, because there's other things you can do as well. Element Games, Northwest Gaming Centre always used to be, I don't know how they're going to run it now, always used to be open quite late with its own bar. So you actually got everyone staying at the venue Saturday night, which creates a very different type of environment where you can play Heresy, you can play board games, you can play a completely different miniatures game in the evening. Whereas some people will still want to go out to the bars and clubs. So lots of opportunities and things going forwards that we can try out and see what works. But I'm definitely going to do another one, even though I probably didn't want to on the Sunday.
On the Sunday, I thought you weren't going to do it anymore ever again.
No, it was. There were a few moments when I was like, even in my heart of hearts, I knew I'd do it again anyway. But I was like, this is just not worth it. This is really not worth it. No one's read your pack. It gets quite frustrating actually sometimes. You're like, I put all this effort into this pack. I've written all this fluff, because that's pretty much all my own stuff. And I know, like Joe from the club, I'll be like, Joe, you read any of the fluff? No. Just went straight to the rules. I'm like, yeah, I expected that of you. I wonder how many others did that. It was quite nice to have a couple of people come up and say, no, I read all the fluff. Yeah, cool. I'm not expecting to win prizes with it or anything like that, but just to create a bit of an atmosphere. So, yeah, who knows? I'm sure I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'll do it all again another time.
I'm sure you will.
Oh, dear Lord. And I'm still going to ban you from entering any painting competitions.
Well, you could have told me I was banned before I entered.
I think I did, to be fair. All I kept seeing was these 3 Golden Demon trophies appearing. I was like,
they were objective markers, and they worked very well, thank you.
I was going to move them to secret location, but I thought I'd better not.
I got a fair bit of stick for that. I think it's fair to say.
Too right, absolutely too right. Brilliant. Well, yeah. Again, as I say, that was a bit freeform. It was a bit mind dump. So I'm not 100% sure how that's going to come across. If you did get something out of it, please let me know. Because if not, then I'll try not to do an episode like this again. But we'll have to look at that. And we'll leave it there because it's been quite a long segment, and we'll come back and close out the show. Okay, well that was a little bit different than planned, but it's more of a view from the event organiser side of the table. So particularly for maybe any people who are looking at holding an event, there might be some in there for you. Something in there, certainly some kind of don't do what I've done, which is always the quickest way to learn things, I find, is when you get something wrong, it becomes very apparent. But yeah, that's the nature of the beast with doing anything, isn't it?
It is indeed. And
I don't think there's really much to talk about at the end of the show. You got anything you want to bring up?
Not particularly, no.
We're going to be having a talk with Miles, aren't we, to try and organise some special painting bits and pieces. Don't want to go into it too much.
Yeah. Miles and I had some in-length discussions about what we could maybe do for the podcast.
Yeah, so if you don't hear anything about that over the next kind of few shows, then feel free to give us a buzz. But it's, we've got Miles' talent there and Neil's talent there. And actually, in some ways, they're very different kind of talents.
Yes.
So it's quite nice to have a contrast on that kind of thing. Don't worry, I won't be pitching in too much advice. because, I'm limited. I understand like the mechanics without actually being able to perform them. But yeah, that's something we want to get done, which will be cool. I do have a new show of force planned. It got delayed for everything else as well, but we will be doing them for the people who have asked for that. It's kind of a different beast, those, so it needs to be handled differently. But that's cool. And then I suppose we're just, if you want to get a hold of us, then you can contact Greg at theimperialtruth.com.
And Neil at theimperialtruth.com.
Nice and easy. And also on Twitter, so at Child of Fang.
And at Neil Paints.
And at Imperial_Truth. And those are the best ways to get a hold. Don't forget, we've got the Facebook as well. So if you are working on something, post it up. Let's see what armies you've got going on. Had a number of people kind of ask, saying that they would love to have come last weekend, but their armies weren't ready. They didn't have 3,000 points, or they're just starting out on that path. So yeah, lots of people working on Heresy. Let's keep spreading the love. It's amazing sometimes how just a picture inspires you, or breaks that kind of lull you've got in painting as well.
Yeah, and with painting, it can be a slog sometimes to try and get stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are struggling as well, and put the photos up and ask for, criticism or constructive criticism, feedback in any form, then obviously the guys and girls on there will do that as well, because it's all about helping each other out. Sometimes you must get this quite a lot because you work on a model for so long that sometimes you get blind to it.
Oh yeah, I find that all the time.
Yeah, so it's, you're working on it so long that you can no longer tell what's good and what's bad. It's like, it's just this model I've been staring at for hours.
Yeah, I find it a lot with my bits. I do need to take a break from them and step back and reevaluate them later on. And it's amazing the amount of times I go back and change things and rework things. Yeah,
and even me as an average painter, the amount of times I've taken a photo, put it on our group WhatsApp chat, and gone, I'm working on this, guys, what do you think? And they've all gone, oh yeah, that's really cool, I like this. And I'm like, oh good, because I wasn't sure. Like, most of me, like 90% of me was like, this works. But that 10% of me was like, but does it work? Or is it just me? Because it's amazing how things like a good friend of ours, Pete, who was at the weekend, he had this Tyranid army which looked really great, and he used the same colour scheme for his Imperial Guard, and he liked them. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But I honestly think that paint scheme on Imperial Guard was less than half as good as it was on the Tyranids. And it was a tan and blue, and there's no reason in a weird way why it wouldn't work, but it didn't work for me. Again, if he turns around and he likes it, then he can just say, cool, well, I like it and I'm going to carry on doing it. And, you're the one who has to look at your models at the end of the day, for a lot.
Definitely, yeah.
But sometimes it can be, oh, right, yeah. Sometimes it's just that confirmation. Sometimes it is like, well, this is happening. And then it clicks in your brain going, oh, yeah, no, I was picking up on it without actually ever seeing it. Like that, there's that clash there or what have you. So it can be helpful. So even if you don't put it on the group, having a little, say, a WhatsApp group with your mates can be really useful for that kind of thing. And as I say as well, the amount of times you see a picture like me doing my Stormcast, the colour of the Thousand Suns, is because I was kind of like, I don't want to do them this, I don't want to do them that, and pictures of Thousand Suns happened to be around at the time, and it was like, actually, that's a really good idea. I really like that. I wanted to paint that, but I'm not going to collect Thousand Suns until I earn loads of money and have time to build them and paint them. So never. So, yeah, it's cool. It's all good. And that's what being part of the community is all about, really. The other thing I would suggest, actually, again, we've mentioned it before, go and find the painters on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Go and join the Facebook groups like Evia Metal and trying to think, the Horus Heresy painting and modelling group, and then Twitter, put your hashtag Horus Heresy or the Warhammer ones again. So what were they for the Warhammer
Painting
ones?
Warhammer, painting Forge World.
Yeah, there we go. So if you put those in again, that provides you with people you may then want to follow. Because if you look at it the right way, and most people do, you don't get hugely put off by good painting. So I look at Neil's stuff. I'm not going to replicate it. I'm not going to try and replicate it because I'm not at that stage. But I know that, and in my head I can compartmentalise that Neil paints his Perturabo for competition. Cool. But you can still get inspired from it. You just have to bear in mind that don't let it put you off because it's a different beast.
Yeah, indeed, definitely. And one thing I took out of the weekend, which for me was a real revelation, that the level to which you competition paint is a colossal waste of time and energy for army painting.
All that detail, Neil, is completely invisible from 2 foot away.
My army, I was using some Golden Demon winning pieces in my army, and they were just completely lost on the table.
Yeah, it's quite funny when Pete was taking the photo of your Ferris. So this is a gold winning Golden Demon model. So you expect quality. He was like, every time I zoomed in, it picked up a different detail.
Yes.
And it's like, but that was on his camera. There's no way you're seeing that in a slightly yellowish light at 2.5 foot away. And that's if it's directly underneath you.
Yeah, indeed.
So you don't need to be aiming. In fact, we've said it before, the old Warhammer stuff. People used to paint the front rank of their models to their best of their ability, and then as they went further back was less and less detail on it because no one ever looked at them.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's the washes that GW do, the metallic paints they do now, the glosses, all those things can make an army look really good relatively quickly, relatively easily. And the big thing is people like me can make an army that other people walk around and say, oh, that looks really good. And it's like, yeah, I painted it all one colour, I washed it all, I did some highlights, and boom.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly that, yeah.
Really? It's like, yeah, of course it did. It's never going to win a competition, but it can be as simple as that. And I think that the weekend really showed that with, 57, 58 armies, and a lot of them at a very good level.
I would say I was so impressed with the majority of the armies that I thought to myself, wow, a good colour scheme, well executed, it trumps competition painting for,
Yep. Good colour scheme, good basing that complements the model and the colour scheme. All those little tricks, but, you don't have to worry about shading the eye holes. Things like that. It just doesn't need to be done for a tabletop piece. And sometimes I get caught up in painting too much detail on models because I don't want to for certain armies. I kind of have to bring it back and go, well, no one's going to see that. So, groovy. And all the little tricks and tips help as well. It was really good to see. I can't remember if I mentioned it in the main part or not. There was a Blood Angels Imperial Fist force, combined force there, and they were painted really bright red, really bright yellow. I was like, this is amazing. Because you just don't see that much in the Heresy, because lots of people in the Heresy want that gritty realism.
Yes, definitely.
But there's no reason why you can't have troops that have just deployed from 3 months of flying through space who've cleaned their armour.
Yes, and the Ultramarines, they like clean armour.
Exactly, and I still really love a little bit of that bright, vibrant colour. I think it's amazing. So yeah, don't feel ashamed of doing that. I think it's awesome, and it's different. It's so different as well. They stood out a mile because they were really bright and shiny. I thought it was awesome, so good. But yeah, cool. I think we'll leave it there. I think we'll wrap it up and we'll come back And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with something to talk about for sure. Got a few things going on. It all depends on timings as usual. But yeah, thank you for joining me, Neil.
No problem.
And you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.